Hi, I'm Setareh Ebrahimi with Jake Wildhall for Thanet Writers Meets. Hi Jake, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, not bad, not bad.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, good. So I just wanted to ask you, I know some people say that you should write every day, but I tend to write only when I'm inspired. How do you find it?
I think I don't write poetry every day.
Yeah.
I only write poetry when I'm inspired, and I think that's fine. I think there is an importance in maybe writing something every day, whatever that is, if it's like a blog post, a diary, a Twitter, a Facebook post, like just something, so you're kind of working the muscle, but it doesn't have to be the thing. So like if you're a poet and you write poetry predominantly, it doesn't have to be the thing that you're predominant in. It can be something of anything, just to kind of be doing it and keep it flowing. But yeah, I don't know, I don't think it would be conducive for me to force myself to write poetry every day.
Yeah, that makes sense. What made you set up, if you did set up, Bad Betty Press, and how did Bad Betty come about and everything like that?
So I wanted to put a book out, and I was gonna self-publish it, just do it through whatever. But then me and Amy were talking, true story, and we Amy was pregnant, and we were like, well, you're gonna take some time off work while you have this baby, so we're gonna have loads of spare time. So what we'll do is we'll set up a publishing house, and that's
awesome.
that will mean that we're completely and utterly sane while we have a child together. And it is very difficult to do both at once. In fact, it's very difficult to do just one.
It sure is,
yeah. And it was an awfully great idea, somewhere in between those two things.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you look for in poetry, and what advice would you give to people starting out?
What do I look for, or what does Bad Betty look for?
Whichever you feel like answering.
Okay, so I think I'd probably look for I think it is kind of the same. I think they are the same. I think me and Amy have slightly different tastes, but what we're looking for from writers is kind of, so the name Bad Betty came from bad in a Foxy Brown sense. So Foxy Brown was a late 80s, early 90s female rapper, and Betty as in like an old English word for like a beautiful person.
Cool, yeah.
So like bad and beautiful in that sense. So that's kind of the things we like. That's the things we publish. Yeah. Whatever that means. What that could mean lots of things, but if it boils down to it being that, then that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And what advice would I give to people starting writing? Write. Go to events. Pay attention to everyone.
So reading both Solomon's World and Blank now, would you say that Blank is a continuation of the story in a sense, or how do you see it a different thing altogether?
A different thing.
Yeah.
So now I look back at it, I think that Solomon's World is kind of fine. And between Solomon's World and Blank I did a lot of reading.
Yeah.
A lot of reading, like I read 100 and something books in a year, so that I could kind of sit down and write it. But it was also the distance between Solomon's World is like I got clean when I had started writing Solomon's World, so I gave up. So I got clean, and then by the time I had written Blank or had started writing Blank, the distance from that was enough that I could write about it in a very a different way. So like a way where I've had distance, I'm able to write about something that now I've been like in recovery for 2 years, going on 3 years. So I feel like it's actually the beginning of a different journey, and I feel like that's what I feel the difference is. I feel like it is its own thing.
Yeah, great. I saw that challenge you did when you were reading, was it a poetry book a day?
Yeah, I read a poetry book or a poetry pamphlet every day for 40 days. And yeah.
What did you gain from it?
I think it's kind of. I think afterwards I noticed that when I wrote stuff, it just felt better. Like, just because I hadn't really read a lot, so I wasn't a massive reader. A lot. I just went to a lot of poetry nights, and then I just started reading, and I just couldn't stop. And I wanted to kind of build up my knowledge of what I had read poetry-wise, and I think it just gave me an idea of what was kind of normal, or what was cliched, or what was different, what I enjoyed more, what I enjoyed reading. And therefore, in a way, like, if I enjoy reading this more, how do I write so it's different? How do I write so it's unique? How do I write so people don't feel this is everything that's the same?
Yeah, great. So has parenthood and family changed your writing?
Well, I've got 2 kids, as you know, so I feel like it's changed me, which I guess changes your writing, because, I mean, a lot of the time we're writing from perspective in some way, even if we're writing about something that isn't related to us, and children change you. Even if they don't change you inherently as a person, which I think they mostly do anyway, they change the relationships you have with people and how people relate to you as a person. So they change the relationships you have with your friends, they change the relationships you have with your parents and with your partner, and because of that, they change the whole world around you, and they give you something to look at and to acknowledge and to write about. Even if it isn't the child, my understanding of things is always your understanding of things is always different after a child, whether it's like the first or the second one. So yeah, basically, yes, I think it's changed my writing.
Yeah.
For whatever that means. It does change your writing. Yes. Yeah.
Do you think poetry is a good tool for coping with emotional difficulty?
No.
Do you not? Okay. That's
No, I think a lot of people are getting applause, and what they really need is therapy, which is a Gabriel Akamo quote. I think poetry should be used in conjunction of real, honest, emotional support and therapy, which is obviously very difficult to get and very unaffordable and hard to get on the NHS. But actually, I don't think poetry should be a sole source of coping with emotional things. I think it should be used in conjunction with genuine therapy.
Great, yeah. And finally, is performing your poetry an important part of what you do, and do you think performing is essentially necessary for being a poet now, or not really?
I think yes and no. I think it's different for different people. I mean, all poets perform, even if they're not on the, for want of a better word, spoken word or performative scene. Like, people are always doing readings. They just use the word reading instead of performing. They're like, oh, I'm doing a reading. And so it's the same. You will have to go and speak at literary festivals. If it doesn't matter. Yes, I think that even if you're just reading out of your book, then you have to do some sort of getting on stage and reading, if you can. Yeah.
Alright, brilliant. Well, Jake Wildhall, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you to Top Hat and Tails for having us today.